Hey folks, Dave here. Welcome to the program today. Check it out. Tomorrow, Wednesday, June 18th, 5 o'clock Pacific, 8 o'clock Eastern, Steve and I are hosting Steve's most popular, most requested clinic of all time. Absolutely free, 100% online. Now, folks have traveled from all over the world to join Steve at his ranch, and folks have traveled from all over the world to whatever expo or clinic Steve is visiting for this specific clinic. One, it's not going to cost you a thing. It's free. And two, you don't have to go anywhere. Just tune in, get registered at muleranch.com/mule-questions, and we will send you a link for you to join us live tomorrow. Today's program, though, in our summer series reviewing our most popular programs of all time, this is with Lynn from Mountain Ridge Gear. Several years back, Eric was in town, and Steve had him join him at his ranch to film this episode of Ask Steve. So Eric is a donkey expert. You can visit mountainridgegear.com to learn all about him. And you might recognize one of the hats Steve's worn over time. It's the original ATV, the original all-terrain vehicle. Well, that's Eric's hat. At mountainridgegear.com, you can get that hat. Enjoy today's program. Get signed up for tomorrow's free clinic. Why does my mule do that? And we'll see you then. Bye-bye, everyone. We got our first question here. Danelle says, my donkeys are about 2 years old. What is the best bridle and bit to start with? Also, do I just use a halter with a surcingle? So, Steve?
We got a donkey professional here. So what kind of bit and bridle do you use there, Eric?
You know, I generally start them off with one of the double-rolled snaffle bit, what I like. With a donkey and a bit, I've done it both ways. I used primarily Steve's bits, his trail bits his finished bits is what I go with when I finish. But I started the donkey on that here a while back and went straight to it. And I think the key with any bit you use with the donkey, you just got to remember they brace against pressure. Pulling harder doesn't mean stop quicker with a donkey in most respects. So whatever bit you decide you use, you got to be gentle with them, because you can make a donkey hard mouth really quick, because they're already got that instinct to brace against a bit, no matter what bit's in their mouth. So I like the trail bit that Steve that sells. When I'm on the trail and I've got a pack string behind me, I've got to have a bit that I can stop a donkey with if I'm crossing a difficult, water crossing or something like that. So I like those bits for that. But like I say, you just got to start off gentle. I don't know what would you say to?
You bet. All right, so let's start number one. Let's use a surcingle, and let's adjust a halter, and let's start getting them to work off their nose. Remember, they work off their nose. So if we adjust a halter, we put them in a surcingle, we turn them loose in there, and they will start framing themselves up, balanced. Top of their hip, top of their wither, top of their head, balanced across, and their nose on the vertical. You see, donkeys, they're very sensitive about their nose, and they're very sensitive about pulling and bracing. So just like Eric was saying, the bit's one thing, but it's how much pressure you're putting them on is another. But see, if you hook them up in a surcingle and get them to go on their own, they learn to pack the bit. There's nobody on their back. They learn to pick up the bit and carry it. They learn to move at a walk and at a trot and a canter.
I was going to say, some of the lessons I've learned is usually from doing something wrong. That's what usually works. And I had Janet one time that I was working with. We started off with surcingle, had an around pin, packing the bit. She got quiet with the bit pretty quick. I was pretty happy with her coming along there. I had the double roll snaffle bit that I was working her. And what I was noticing when I would try to bump her, I think it was bump her left, she would brace against me and go right. And so she would brace and go away from it. And so what I realized is there was something causing the problem. All right. So the first thing I thought of, and I hadn't checked this, was wolf teeth. And sure enough, she had these really short wolf teeth in there, and they were, some wolf teeth will actually have a root that will go all the way up into the skull. These didn't. They were really, really loose, and so those are the ones that are really painful on them. And so that bit was hitting that wolf tooth, and so it would bump that wolf tooth, and she would brace against it and go away from it. And so as soon as I pulled that wolf tooth, I got back on her, I bumped her left, and she was expecting it to hurt. I could tell she was expecting it to hurt. And she's like, wait a minute, it doesn't hurt anymore. You know?
Good.
But to this day now, then the problem I had after that was getting the bit in her mouth.
Oh, yeah.
Because now she sees this bit, that thing hurt me. So, yeah, so I would tell anybody before you start this whole process of bits in the mouth, man, especially if you get an animal you don't know anything about, you don't know who had the animal, you know, make sure those wolf teeth have been pulled, because they can, especially in a donkey, they can really interfere with that bit, you know. And that could cause a lot of problems. And so it doesn't matter what kind of bit you're putting in there, you're going to be fighting it, you know. So
Jarrett's here. He's got a question. Jarrett, it's so good to have you here again. He says, hi, guys. How long do you leave the bit hanging down, bumping the teeth? Do you ever tighten it up? Do you only do it with the Mule Riders martingale, or do you start the finished bit loose as well? Thank you. Good question. Steve, Eric?
With the Mule Riders martingale, I never adjust the bit. That face and that head is always changing on that mule as they grow older. Remember, this is a 6-month program. So there's going to be times to where that bit's he's going to like it in one place. Other times he's going to like it in another place. 6 months, 4 to 6 hours a week. So, then we do the same thing with finished bit, except for the finished bit, we don't let it hang down bumping the teeth. So it'd be the incisors on a Molly or a Jenny. It'll be the incisors, and then on a John mule they have the canine. So it'll be bumping the canine on the John, incisors on the Mollies and the Jennies. Okay. So yes, I do let it hang down, and I always let them show me where to pack it. The difference is on the finished bit, I do not. I let them pick it up and hold it where they like it, and then I'll adjust it to that spot. Now here's the key thing. Always remember, when you take it off, always loosen it up 2 or 3 notches to take it off to keep it from earshot. And then when you put it on, it's loosened 2 or 3 notches, or just take it up 1 notch or so, where they'll pick it up. You want it about 1/2 inch from the corner of the mouth. They'll pull it where they want it, then adjust it to that spot. But allow them to tell you today where the best place is, because when you go gagging them with it, they're going to start bracing you and gapping their mouth. When their mouth is really open up and gagged, you know, the first thing people do is they make them do something. They tie a canvas around their nose. Don't do that. Give them time to ask questions. Where's the best place for me to pack that bit? You know, doesn't that work with them donkeys?
yeah, I mean, you see people with it pulled way back in their mouth. I mean, with a donkey, you know, and I mean, donkeys. I've seen one that neck reins. It very rarely they neck rein, and so they're always working off the corner of that mouth. And so, you know, with a donkey, when I'm moving with a donkey, it's my pinkies really. You know, I do the ask till demand. You know, but it's usually just a real light touch.
Yeah.
And with a donkey, it's kind of funny. I may say I want to go right, and the donkey says, "Oh, right, okay, I'll go right." That's kind of how they do it. They kind of think through it, you know. So they figure they're smarter than we are until we prove it. And that's kind of how they do it. But so if I've got that bit pulled all the way up in that mouth like that, like you say, all they're going to do is brace against that. And what are you doing? And now they're totally confused because they don't know what I'm trying to communicate. I'm pulling on them all the time. So, and you're going to have a wreck. I mean, they're going to run off in a ditch or something like that. So you want it, like you say, where it's comfortable with them. But, you know, I've heard the horse community, they'll say, oh, you need one crease in the lip. You ever heard that?
Yeah.
One crease. You know, well, not with a donkey. You know, you don't want that day, bad day.
Yeah. Wouldn't be a good day for a mule either.
Mm-hmm. No.
That's good. Next question we got. This one came in from Leslie. It was an email. Leslie sent us this message. Says, Rio is 5 and is just being started under saddle, including the Mule Riders martingale. Use it for 6 months, perhaps longer since my trainer comes only once a week, then switch to a trail rider bit. Is this correct? So far, we are pleased with his progress. Plus, I'm interested in the tapaderos for the added safety. Is 5 foot size a lady's size, 5-inch size a lady's size? Thank you for all you do to help us green trainers. I only wish I had discovered the joy of mules 40 years ago. Man, we hear that a lot. That's Leslie and Rio sending a message in. So what do y'all say?
She's really doing awesome. She's got a trainer to kind of help her along, but she's and only once once a month. So she's really doing awesome. So yes, what we want to do is we definitely want to keep them so that they're soft. And we can't do it if we're continually pushing on their tongue, continually pushing on their bars in their mouth. Now, yes, if I'm going to go hunting and I need, there's lots of new things going on out there, I'm going to take my Mule Riders martingale. I've got full control the whole time with that Mule Riders martingale. Now, my finished bit's nice, but when they want to, they stick their nose in the air, gap their mouth, and they got you. Because when they're scared, they're going to run, folks. They're going to run. I don't care what kind of bit there is. That's why I use my Mule Riders martingale. I know I can stop that run. Sooner or later, I'm going to get them stopped.
Linda says, I am in Florida. I have a mule that came from Tennessee originally, belonged to an Amish family for about 12 years, pulled a buggy a lot, and was ridden with a saddle, and I really don't know which bit to use on her. I don't know whether to go with the correction bit that you show on your video or whether to get a double twisted wire bit. She's 12, so she's got some miles on her. Any direction that you would give to Linda there?
You know, most of the Amish just mainly use horse bits, period. Well, majority of people do. But see, I've designed my bits so that they fit the pallet better. And so I took the port and I tipped it ahead almost a 1/4 inch. And that really makes the difference in how the mule, the donkey, breaks over. Number one, get the teeth floated. Get that done first. Once the teeth are floated, that's correct. You know, I rather doubt that the mule neck range. So let's ask this question. Can you ride it 80% off your legs? If you can ride it 80% off your legs, you're going to go the trail rider bit. And in other words, if you can turn on the forehand, turn on the hindquarters with your legs, then you don't need a lot of bit. But if you're not doing that, then you're going to need to use the Mule Riders martingale, and that will help you develop into the finished bit.
Brittany says, hello from Savannah, Missouri. Bought my first mule about a month ago. New mule owner right there. We have a gaited and quarter horse, defiantly. Let's see. We have gaited and quarter horses so defiantly. Love these live streams and learning more about mules. Brittany, we're glad to have you here. We've got Linda, my friend, says horses obey, donkeys decide. Eric, what do you have to say about that?
Oh, they do. I would definitely. I would tell you. You know, when I started working with donkeys, it's been about 12 years ago. I knew horses. That's what I knew. And so, what I quickly learned is that horse logic does not work on a donkey. Yeah. You know, if you look at all the negative words in English language have to do with ass, it was probably a horse guy working with a donkey. I guarantee you, came up with some of those words. But because I mean, you can be very frustrated when you work with a donkey if you don't understand what he's communicating to you. So the donkey is constantly communicating. He's telling you what's going on in his mind. So you know, you see the old picture of the prospector pulling the donkey, him squatting down, walking. I mean, that donkey's communicating. He's saying. Yep. Whatever you're doing, I'm worried you're going to get me hurt or killed.
Yeah.
And so you got to figure out as a trainer how to overcome that and get that trust with that donkey. The biggest thing I think I've learned with donkeys is that communication between me and the halter and the lead rope. Yep. Those things are huge. If you're talking about leading him on the ground, if you're talking about putting him in a pack string, there's lots of different techniques on how to train donkey, and some of them include, giving treats and that sort of thing. Not a big fan of that. No. I saw your one video said I'm not training a dog, and I like the old analogy for a vending machine. You go put a quarter in a vending machine, you get a piece of candy, right? You put that quarter in a vending machine and the candy doesn't come out. What do you do to the vending machine?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
I want that donkey doing the same thing to me, so I'm not a big fan of giving treats. I have done it with some of my wild donkeys that I've tried to get that initial, let them know I'm not going to kill them kind of thing, and get that breakthrough. But I tell you, I think I have learned more about equines working with donkeys than ever.
Yep.
And I used to work for a guy, working horses. I mean, that was something I learned to do when I was a young man, but now when with donkeys, I don't hit the ground like I did when I was younger, and so donkeys don't really buck. And so I like that about a donkey.
Yeah.
But I have had a donkey buck now. I will say that. I was trying to get a Janet to leave one time, and we went down in the ditch and back up, and I got done, and I asked my wife, so what was she doing? And she said she was bucking. I said, so that was a buck? She goes, yeah, it was pretty pathetic, but it was a buck, you know. But the donkeys don't generally buck too much, so that's a nice thing about them. But no, but I know it's a long way around.
They don't want to burn the energy, I think, you know.
No, well, they don't want to get themselves hurt.
No, that's right.
You know, I mean, they're not going to do anything. I mean, that's a great thing about it. So if you're sitting on that animal, he's not going to hurt himself. So guess what?
Yeah,
I'm safe too. So that's a nice thing about a donkey, you know.
Linda's got a question. She says, is it possible to get those fat pads off a middle-aged standard donkey? My Jenny donkey, Millie, is 17 years old. I purchased her as a professional buddy for a long mare. The vet and farrier said her feet are undamaged, but no one has any practical advice about the pads. The fat pads, they just say feed less. I have never fed her any supplements, grain, or treats of any kind. She spends part of the day during the spring months in a dirt pen, and she doesn't even get hay in the winter, just field stubble. She seems to live on air. Appreciate any advice. Is there anything that's slim fast for donkeys? Slim fast for donkeys. Now, I think I remember hearing you say, Steve, that's kind of natural and it's just going to happen, but I can't remember for sure. Can you answer this question for Linda?
So I can answer. So the fat pockets on donkey's back, those I think that's probably the easiest one to get off. But my recommendation is don't just starve your donkey to get rid of them. They need exercise, and you know, one of the best things that I found to get that fat off that donkey is to teach them to drive. They love to drive. It is not hard to teach a donkey to drive. They do it naturally, pull against a cart naturally. And I had a donkey that was overweight, and I'm telling you, in 90 days, if you drive that donkey maybe once or twice a week, and they enjoy it. I mean, their ears are up, man. They're liking it. They're going in. You do that, you'll see that weight come off if you adjust their what they're eating, and then you get them good exercise. I mean, you can get the weight off by feed, but it's going to take a lot longer.
Yeah.
You know, and I mean, nobody wants to starve their donkey to get the weight off. You know, but they need exercise. I don't know. What do you think?
No, absolutely. They got to have exercise, and driving is great for it. The biggest thing that you got to do is you got to dry lot them and get them off the carbohydrates. They need to be, you know, and don't just go buy your hay thinking you're going to buy some good grass hay and by golly you're okay. There could be a lot of carbohydrates in there and you can be pushing 13-14%. Always ask or test, have your hay tested to know what you have in that hay. That's extremely important. You go buying hay, I would buy hay for 3 to 4 years at a time in advance. And the reason I do that is because hay changes so much from year to year. And so then therefore the colic problems end up being very prevalent. And the other thing is too, is the salmonella that's in the hay. But anyway, going back, we took a metal tube and put a handle on it and with a sharp point. And we would shove it into the hay and pull it out, and then we would take it into the college, to the what's that called? Where they do agriculture and this sort of thing is the name for it. And we had them test it, and they would tell us what the vitamins and minerals, snake body parts, you know, rat poop, the whole bit that was in there, you know. But have them test it. Folks just going to buy a bale of hay, hay isn't hay. It changes from field to field, year to year, month to month. So that's the nice thing I like about feeding pellets. It's the same pellet every single day.
It's we've got the Arizona Agriculture Extension Association. I think that's what you're talking about. The extension associations, and a lot of different schools will have those. Steve references the one here at the University of Arizona. But I've heard you say before that a lot of schools will wind up having an agriculture extension association, correct?
Yes, and the one in Casa Grande is real good. They can tell you what's going on. But folks, just because you buy a bale of hay, don't mean it's going to be the same from week to week, month to month.
Yeah.
If you're going to buy hay for the year, the same field, same farmer, if you can do that, that's perfect. But try and buy it for the year, because you cannot believe how much hay changes. You buy a first cutting, a second, third cutting, hay changes, you know.
Next question we got here. This one was emailed in from Alicia. She says, very interested in your trail light saddle for my mammoth donkey. Could you tell me about how it fits? Do I need to measure? Will it work with any saddle pad? Would your saddle pad be better? Anything else I need to know about the saddle? I do have back pain. Is it a comfortable seat? Thank you so much.
Sure, you bet. Well, you know, that saddle course that we have, that free course, we'll flat open her eyes. She'll see from a 13-2 mule up to a 17-hand mule. She'll see all the different sizes there, you know. People there's not a day that don't go by when somebody calls me, how can your saddle fit all these animals, you know? And here's the problem. Now, we've talked about this before. If you do like most saddle makers do, they measure, let's just say we measure him in January, and we get that measurement. He's fat and been sitting around. And then we measure him again in July when he's been used and starting to toughen up. You're going to have two different measurements. So you don't go by muscle mass, you go by that bone structure. And then, Eric, you ride a lot of different donkeys, all different sizes.
Right.
And from what size to what size, Eric?
So here's an interesting thing that I discovered when I was designing pack saddles for donkeys. We started making mini saddles, or little 12-inch bars. Okay. Yeah. And it was kind of an aha moment for me. We designed this bar and we made sure it fit. I had several different mini donkeys. That little 12-inch bar, guess what? Fit on my 15-1 donkey's back perfectly.
Wow. Wow.
So what that tells you is the bone structure of a donkey, from something that's 34 inches at the shoulder all the way up to 15 hands, the slope of that back does not vary hardly at all. I mean, there are the variations. I'm not saying all of them are exactly the same, but it's so subtle. It was kind of an eye-opening thing to me. Yeah. You know how these donkeys don't vary much. So Steve's saddles, I've got 9 donkeys, and the smallest was 42 inches at the shoulder, and my son, when he was 10 years old, 11 years old, was riding the trail light with that little bitty 42-inch donkey, and it fit her great. You know, so yeah, all the way up by 15 hand. I did 80 some odd miles last year in the Wind River on a 15 hand Jennet with your cowboy.
Yeah.
And not an off colored hair, not a wear mark, not a sore, nothing. I mean, she did great. You know, so they're good fit donkeys, good fitting saddles on donkeys. They really do.
And Eric goes through a lot of donkeys. He does a lot of clinics. Matter of fact, I also have to mention that tomorrow Eric is going over here to the Arizona State Prison, and he's training they don't say
they've got a program going on over there. It's not just a one-off. They've actually got a program, don't they?
Yes, they do. Yeah, and that's Randy over there. He's a good guy, solid Christian guy too, pastor at one of the cowboy ministries. And so I got him started over there he's riding my saddle over there and in that gear. And then Randy comes over and tunes him up, and comes over a couple times a year and helps him out. They got an awesome program. Folks, if you want to buy a donkey that's been ridden, that these inmates have spent time on, you can come here to this really good program. You can see what they do. Eric spends time with them, make sure they're right. I help them out and get it going. They've got some classy looking donkeys over there. They do.
Yeah. Randy told me, I was here 2 years ago, and he said it was the first time he'd ever seen more adoptions for donkeys than Mustangs. And at that time, I think he had like 300 head of donkeys.
Folks are finding out. Folks are discovering just how great they are. So I want to get back to Neil's question. Neil says, if my britchin rubs the hair off, is it too tight? I set everything to fit each time I saddle up. It doesn't seem like it's too tight.
To see pictures how it's rubbing.
Yeah.
You know.
Send me a picture.
Yeah.
Here's what you want to look at, Dave. Let's say this is my britchin. All 4 fingers is the width of my britchin. If I'm only seeing a wear spot of 2 fingers, that means I've got it straight. I don't have it sitting flush.
Right.
It has to sit flush. And another thing too, it's really important. And Eric, you've seen this being up and down these mountains. Adjust the breeching to the terrain.
Right.
If you're going down a steep canyon and you've adjusted that mule's breeching and stuff to flat ground, that saddle's going to wear. I mean, that breeching's going to wear, and that saddle is going to go forward. Before you go down the hill, loosen up the cinches, lift the back of the saddle up and down, wiggle it, let some cool air go through there, adjust your breeching so that donkey, that mule has to sit on that breeching and hold it back. Because otherwise, you got to remember, that booger was 6 foot long when you started hypothetical figures, but he ends up being 5.5 inches because he's getting his butt up underneath him, holding him back. So, and send me a picture. That's one thing that we like, huh, Eric, is send us pictures so we can take a look, see, you know. And
there's several things that can be causing that. Like it could be it's too tight. That could be part of it. A lot of people think, well, I don't want my saddle moved, so I want everything to be tight.
Mm-hmm. You know,
asking for wear marks if you do that. But it could be, like I said, it could be too high, so it could be the top edge of that rubbing against the pin bone there. It could be too low. I mean, there's a lot of different things could cause that.
You bet. And it also has a lot to do with your hip safe and how it's setting between the dock of the tail and the point of the croup. Yeah. It has to be setting in the middle. Now, driving wise, that hip safe is going to be in front of the point of the croup. But that's the reason they have a crouper, is to keep the saddle from going, the breeching from going up the hip, and because of where the hip safe sits. Hip safe is very important. It decides on where that breeching is going to stay.
Eileen sends a message here. She says, you are the only guy that I know that recommends loosening the bridle on and off, Steve. It really makes sense what you're teaching us. My mule was really head and earshot when I got him 6-year-old. 6-year-old John, but we are improving over time. And Eileen is here every single week learning and learning and learning. And one of the things folks will ask is, I'm a new mule person, I'm a new donkey person, or I'm thinking about getting a mule or a donkey. What do I need to do? And what do you say, Steve? Learn. Learn. And Eileen is here all the time.
You don't need a trainer. You know, you don't need a trainer. Some of the worst things you can do is get trainers that are stuck in their rut.
Yeah.
You know, this guy here, I was telling you about from Arlington, Dale. You know, he was working his mule around. This old guy comes up, looks at him. He says, "You got your saddle back too far." And Dale says, "No, I kind of like it the way it is." You know, he said, "Well, it's going to be a problem for you. You got to have that saddle up on the wither, and you got to have the cinches up underneath the leg. Otherwise, you're going to have a problem." Well, that same guy come by a couple days later. He says, "Why don't you get on that mule?" He said, "Just lay across him to start with." And Dale thought, well, that's not a bad idea. And I told him, don't throw anything but a foot in that stirrup, nothing else. He throws his body across there, and that mule butts and takes off. And he said to me, he says, "Steve, I'm not taking nobody else's advice ever." And that's all well and good, folks. It's like I tell you, if my stuff works for you, use it. If it don't work for you, don't use it. You know, I mean, there's plenty of guys out there with lots of information, and gals, you know, that can, you know, they'll give you some ideas. You can sure give it a try.
Hello from Savannah, Missouri. Bought my very first mule a month ago. He sure has been an amazing animal to learn with. We have 10 horses and then the mule. The only thing I have a problem with is he chews everything. Halter ropes, saddles, stirrups. What can I do to keep him occupied while tied or standing when on him riding so he does not get bored and chew?
Okay, it's not that he's getting bored and chew. There's usually two problems when you got one that's wanting to chew. Number one, their teeth are not balanced and framed up. So they're trying to chew to make it feel good. See, their teeth are always erupting. So it's just like a kid teething. In order for their mouth to feel good, they'll chew. That's one thing. Then the other thing is they're zinc deficient. The majority of these animals that are chewing all the time got to have something in their mouth, have one of those two problems. So, you know, get you a hair follicle test, and you can find out about the zinc situation, and then get them teeth done. Folks, every spring, I don't care what that veterinarian says, they'll say, "Oh, it's going to be okay." No. Okay, not good enough when it comes down to their teeth. They have to grind that feed. That's imperative. They have to grind that feed in order for the intestines to work correctly, in order for them to feel good about it. Their teeth grinding that food is what makes a difference. Get them done, get the TMJs fixed, night and day difference with these animals.
Very good. All right, we got a few more questions here. Did you have something you wanted to add there, Eric?
Yeah, I go to a thing out in California every year at UC Davis, and I've been a speaker there a few times, but it's called the Donkey Welfare Symposium. And it's there's usually there was, I think, 12 countries represented last year, 50 some odd veterinarians, and there's usually about 200 or 300 spectators. So I mean, it's a place you can go if you want to ask a question about donkeys. That is the place. I mean, there are so many experts there. If you want to geek out on donkeys, you can geek out on donkeys. Well, a couple years ago, this lady did a presentation about donkey nutrition, and she talked about the chewing and things. So it's a little different. I don't know. Steve's of course the expert on mules. I don't know mules like I know donkeys, but what I learned out there was that donkeys actually have another separate bacteria in their lower gut where they're actually able to process woody plants, whereas like a horse can't. I mean, a horse can go. It's not even a food a horse would even think about eating, like your stall. I mean, if they're cribbing, cribbing is different than eating wood.
Yeah.
And so I learned that these donkeys in Africa will travel 15 miles a day, and they'll eat lots of different plants, and they'll eat woody plants, and they can process that and actually get nutrients from it. So that was one thing. So eating wood is not something that's not natural for a donkey. It's something that's very natural.
Yeah.
Okay. The other thing, like Steve said, is their teeth. Their teeth they're constantly trying, because they're in Africa, they're eating all this woody stuff there. That helps regulate those teeth somewhat that they may not be able to get while they're in a corral. Of course, then there's nutrients. They're trying to get minerals, like you said, zinc. And then there's another thing. It's just boredom. I think that plays a factor. It's funny because I had 4 donkeys in a stall once, and this one donkey was chewing. And it was like the other 3 donkeys went, oh, we can eat that? And I'm telling you, within a week, I didn't have a barn. I'm going, well, what caused that? They were in here for 3 months and didn't chew a thing. That one I saw started chewing. And so one thing I started doing, I'd get aspen logs. I'm in Colorado. They love to chew aspen. It's a nice soft wood. It's got a lot of nutrients in it. I'd throw a log in there, and they would just go at that log. Give them something to do.
Yeah.
And so what I found is with the donkeys, there's no one thing that causes it. What I'm trying to say here.
Yeah.
There's a lot of different things, a lot of different factors. Trying to figure that out, it can be tough sometimes. But I know donkeys, it's just they're funny animals, but they will. I mean, you have trees in your corral or whatever, they'll eat them all.
Yeah.
They'll be gone. I don't know about mules. If mules do the same.
Oh
thing.
yeah, I'll do the same thing.
Yeah.
I like to take my Palo Verde limbs and throw them with the mules. We got the Phoenix Zoo to start doing that, and they've got a big equine program there now, and they'll take their Palo Verde limbs and throw in there, and those mules and donkeys will chew on it, and it's good for them. Like he's got the other there that really works good. That aspen works really good, but just something like that to chew on. If they're going to be chewers, they might as well go ahead and chew. Now that's different than cribbing. Cribbing is when they're sucking and they're building up on these glands, and they're getting a natural high from it, which we can talk about another day.
Sherry asked the question, what do you do for a mule that is not getting the cue to back up, just isn't getting it?
So the cue to back up, of course, is to, if you've got one that runs 80% off your legs, is just kind of wiggle your legs and they back up. And that's the ultimate. So in the very beginning stages of teaching one to back up, you sit on their back, you have your hands in ice cream cone position. I use my mule rider's martingale. I use my double twisted wire snaffle bit because they can't get away from that. And remember the old deal of bumping. So I've got my hands here like this. I take my left hand, I have it solid, and I just bump my right side. Notice how I'm just rolling my wrist only. Just rolling my wrist. I'm just sitting here bumping. Don't bump a little bit and then stop. Bump a little bit, don't do that. When you start bumping, folks, you're committed. And if this mule or this donkey will do the first thing first, and that is they'll drop their head. When they do, you stop, you're quiet for a second, and then you pick your reins back up and you start bumping again. And then they're thinking, all right, to get you to quit bumping on me, then all I have to do is drop my head and you'll quit bumping on me. Well, that's almost right, because here I am bumping, and then they drop their head and they're thinking, wait a minute, why don't you let go of me? And then all of a sudden they go and they move their shoulder. Okay, now they've done their head, now they've done their shoulder. Now I let go again. And remember, you let go, you quiet a second, and then you pick the reins back up again. Always drop the reins. Pick the reins back up again, go back to bumping. Now they're thinking, all right, I drop my head, I move my shoulder, and you're going to let go of me, but I'm still bumping. And they're thinking, all right, I'm really getting uncomfortable here, I'm getting uncomfortable. So they drop their head, they move their shoulder, then they move their right foot back. Now that's the beginnings of a backup. Notice I didn't say pull on them, I just said bump. And I'm teaching the right brain first. Remember, they don't have the cranial lobe that tells the right side what the left side's doing, the left side what the right side's doing. They don't have that. So once I do that on the right-hand side, then I start on the left-hand side, and I do the exact same thing. Now, why did I start on the right-hand side? The majority of the time, what is on the right-hand side is nothing. It's usually a clean slate. Usually everybody catches them from the left. They saddle them from the left. Everything starts from the left. Go to the right. It's a clean slate for the most part, and where the left side's been used and abused quite a bit.
She says, what about from the ground? And so I would imagine it's a lot of the same, but I put a link to the video, the rope halter video, where you're leading from the lead rope and where you teach that animal to listen, and then if they go where you don't want, you shake that rope and it puts pressure on the nose and they stop. And then it gets to a point where they just see you barely move your hand and you shake the rope, or before you even shake the rope, and they'll back up. Is there anything that you want to add to that there?
Well, the downside of, I personally don't use long lines where I'll walk behind them. Mainly because all that leverage back there, most people pull too much. So if I'm going to do it, I'm going to use from the ground, my mule rider's martingale or a halter. I'm just going to stand up above them, and I'm just going to bump it from the ground. Or stand underneath them and bump them. But do the same thing. Bump, 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 bump. Hold one side solid, bump the other side. Kind of like when I was telling the lady how to get her mule to walk faster.
Yeah.
Right, left, okay? She has to, if you try to do both of them at the same time, it's too much information for the animals. They can't handle it, and they'll brace you, But the little bump, bump, bump works good.
I know with the donkey, it's same kind of deal, but it's when you were talking, I was thinking about timing. Timing is so important in these things. So
yes.
You're looking for the least. I mean, when you talk about that shoulder coming back with a donkey, if she just picks your shoulder one little bit, I'm coming off that pressure. And you got to be really paying attention. You got to be quick because they got to associate that release of pressure to what I just did. And if you're late on that release of pressure, now they're confused.
Yeah.
I moved my thing and you kept pulling.
Yeah.
And especially with a donkey, pulling harder doesn't mean go faster. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah, that's right.
And so you've got that subtle little movements. You got to really come off that pressure, and that's one. Being light-handed and coming off the pressure quick it communicates a lot more to them.
This one's from Melody. Hi, I have an approximately 15 hand high Arab TWH cross that I'd like to order your britchin for. Do I need a smaller riding mule size versus a draft size and riding mule size? He doesn't have a huge butt. Ideally, I'd like to have one that I can use between the Arab and the Belgian that I ride. So we're talking about the britchin here. What is the main difference that we're talking about when sizing up for the britchin?
Well, I just sent that britchin out to her. We've been visiting. You're talking a Tennessee Walker, which can have a narrow, peaky butt, and you're talking about a Arab horse, which can have a narrow, peaky butt. But I got to also say this: there are some breeds of that Arab that has a nice round butt. So let's just go on. The biggest thing that you need to think about with breeching is don't worry about how long or how short it is. Worry about how you adjust it according to your terrain. Your breeching is going to be about 3 to 4 inches wide, and sometimes some people like to have the ring way up in front. Some people like to have it back. It makes no difference. It's more aesthetics than anything else.
Especially when I'm working with donkeys. I got donkeys, like I said, from 42 inches all the way to 15, and I run the same britchins. So like you said, if that D-ring's up in front of the bend of the hip or behind it, really, like I said, I don't know if it makes that big of a difference. You ideally want it. That's where you want it, the D-ring. When you're looking at it, you want it right there. But if it is a front and back, it's not a big deal.
No, it's still going to work. The main thing is know how to adjust it according to the terrain.
Very good. This email came in from Carrie. Carrie says, I have horses. I'm helping a young man who has purchased a mule. I have been reading your info on bits and bridles. Has a copper Tom Thumb type bit. Mule puts her tongue over it. Young man has ridden very little. Suspect will be prone to pull on the reins. Mule seems to be well trained, easy to hand on the ground, easy to bridle, a little pushy. All this to ask, what is a good option for an inexperienced rider? Would a side pull be an option? And is the tongue over bit likely going to be an issue? Thank you.
Okay. Why is the tongue over the bit? Number one, because the bit is up too high. That's why. Folks, you cannot put that bit up high. They're putting their tongue over top, trying to find a way to be comfortable. So in other words, you have it too high. A Tom Thumb bit is the worst bit you can put on a mule or a donkey. It is way too much pressure upon the tongue, and then you have the leverage as well. And then when you compound the amount of trouble by using a copper roller on top of that, that's looking for a donkey or a mule with his mouth open like this, like an alligator. You don't want to do that. So with the beginner, it's very, very difficult to say do this and do that. But the big thing is how they're using their hands. So if I was going to say anything, my mule rider's martingale would be where I would start. But I would start from the ground first, doing the surcingle work, starting with the rope halter, from the rope halter to the mule rider's martingale, and eventually in the finished bit. But the mule has to be soft first. That's super important. Your donkeys have to be soft first. This when I was at the Flying Diamond Ranch this last weekend in New Mexico. What I did is I put several mules into the pens with a variety of things, with the rope halter, with the snaffle bit, and with the finish bit, and so that people can see how they're going to accept those bits, where they're going to balance themselves up. And the one with the finished bit should have never been in a finished bit. He should have been in the double twisted wire. But the person thought he was a little bit better. But anyway, long story short, folks, you can't do enough surcingle work. Surcingle work will get you way ahead, way quicker. Will teach them to be softer, and then you can go from there. But when they're gapping their mouth and getting their tongue over top of the bit, it's because you got it too high. Now, once they learn to do that, they'll start using that against you. So, with my double twisted wire snaffle bit, they put their tongue over top of the bit thinking, I've got that. Well, now that bit is rubbing on the bars of the mouth. Yeah. Rubbing on the bars of the mouth. And so now they're thinking, man, them bars are now getting uncomfortable, so they'll put their tongue back underneath there to protect their bars, and you won the war. But do not, folks, when you put the snaffle bit in your mouth, for 6 months, you do not adjust it. It hangs down, bumping the incisors. It hangs down, that's on a molly mule, and it hangs down, bumping on the wolf tooth, on the canine, thank you, on the canine, so that they learn to pick up the bit and pack the bit. It's imperative they know how to pack the bit. They'll be far more comfortable. And that's both for the beginner and a professional.
Sandra says, I'm Sandra Elliott. I've been a horse lover all my life. My husband and I have 2 mules that are yearlings. Even though we know a lot about horses, we are hesitant in training these mules. When breaking to the halter, should one break a mile to tie before breaking to lead? So I'm not really familiar with breaking to mile break a mile to tie before breaking to lead. Can you talk a little bit about that, and then let Sandra know what she needs to know in order to be less hesitant and more ready to take on these animals?
Well, tying them is an excellent thing to do with a properly adjusted halter. But the best thing you can do is surcingle. You cannot do enough surcingle work. You want one soft. You want one to be to take and with that halter and to respond to the halter correctly. Then that surcingle works. But first of all, before the halter, before the halter is the come along rope. The come along rope will get you more, quicker, faster, will build a nice foundation so that when you put the rope halter on, boom, you got it, you know?
Yeah, I'm a big believer in it. You know, and it's funny because I use it a lot. And I'll usually use it when, that's kind of my graduation. I'll put a tarp down on the ground and put that come along hitch on there. And then we'll cross that tarp with it. And what I'm trying to do with that come along hitch, I'm trying to use as little pressure as I can possibly. I mean, a lot of people think when you're using a come along hitch, you got to rip their face off. And you don't have to do that, okay? I mean, this animal can feel a fly on his butt, so he's going to feel the pressure of a come along hitch. You don't have to do that, you know. So especially with a donkey, I'm looking for the least. If I'm working that come along hitch and I get one little step, I give him that release of pressure.
Yep.
And that's communicating two things. I'm letting him know that, listen, if you do what I want to do, I'm going to take care of your nose, right? And so I think in my mind, he's also thinking he's not going to hurt me if I do this. So we're building a relationship there. So he's respecting the halter, he's respecting me, and like Steve said, that transfers in to so many other things. That transfers into loading in the trailer. It transfers into being tied. It transfers into being ponied behind another animal. I mean, and I've seen it. I had a donkey that wouldn't load in a trailer. I did some work with the tarp for, I think, 3 days. We did maybe 10-minute sessions. And on that third day, he was crossing the tarp really good. I put a rope halter on him. After that, we crossed the tarp. We walked. I thought, let me see if this transfers into the trailer. I walked him over the trailer, jumped right in the trailer.
Yeah.
And so they figured out. He's communicating with this halter. So that, like you said, that come along hitch is a great tool. It's a great tool to have. So
Freckles says, does it help to separate your mule from his buddies every once in a while?
All the time. You don't, folks, get them mules out away from the horses, put them in their stall, and you know what I say? Every single mule, every single donkey should have its own stall. You can keep track of the feed. But here's the thing, is that mule is going to go bonkers. I want to be with my buddies. All right, now here's the problem. You get out on a trail, what's he going to do? I want to be with my buddies. And you're going to have a heck of a time with him, Not that the putting him in their stall will fix it by any means, because they're very subservient to horses. But don't elevate things by letting them be together all the time. That's all you're going to have is nothing but problems. As far as I'm concerned, here on my place, every mule, every donkey's got his own stall. 10 by 20, that's all they need. I just changed things over at the Flying Diamond Ranch in New Mexico. They were sending their animals out to pasture all the time. And they said, man, they're getting hard to catch. I can't hardly put a saddle on them. But in the 3 days that we were there, by the time we were done, had them all individual stalls, those mules were waiting at the door, waiting to go outside. And the ranch manager and the ranch owner said, we have never had it this good before. It changes them tremendously. I know you all like all that pasture that you got and all the free grass, but you know what? You're going to have a far better animal if you keep them in an individual stall. They can drink their water. You can see how much water they drink. They can eat their salt. You can see how much salt, and their feed too. You can keep an eye on their dietary needs, and that's extremely important. It's up to you to take care of them.
Donkeys have a really strong when they bond with another donkey.
Yeah.
I always tell folks that they're looking to buy a donkey. I always get two. And there's lots of reasons for that we can go into, but they work together as a team. Well, some of that with a donkey, some has to do with age, maturity. I mean, the younger donkeys, they can really be. You separate them, you can't get anything out of them.
Yeah.
And I've had people call me. I'm trying to work with this donkey. I said, well, for now, bring his buddy out there and just tie him near, and then go do some work with the tarp or whatever you're doing. Later on, as they mature a little bit, they kind of grow out of that somewhat. But I know mules you may not want. I may want to ride off by myself, and I can't take his buddy all the time. So, a little different deal. But
I've had people buy goats and Shetland ponies to have a pasture mate. And now they can't go nowhere without the goat or the Shetland pony.
Bill says, my 18-year-old TWH, what's a Tennessee walking horse?
Yes.
Okay. My 18-year-old, what's that?
Smarter.
I'm picking it up. I put this up here and I felt something change. Something changed and I feel like all this new information was inside my head. My 18-year-old TWH Molly absolutely hates a rear cinch, and she'll let you know that. My trainer said to forget about the rear cinch. She is fine with just a breeching and a crooper. Any suggestions? And she will buck going into a canter as mentioned earlier, but I missed your comment.
Oh, geez. All right, number one.
A bunch of stuff going on there.
Yeah, number one, fire the trainer. Okay, let's go back. No, he just needs to learn better. Look, they bucked when you put the saddle on the first time. They were unhappy when you put the breeching on the first time. They were unhappy when you put the bridle on. They were unhappy. They're going to blow up. All right. Tough. Look, here's what's going to happen. You're either going to knock the scapula out of that mule, and he's going to start being crippled, or he's going to have to take that breeching. You don't need to ride him, and you especially don't need to put a crooper on unless you want to break his back. Listen, put that breeching on there, tighten it up, loosen up that front cinch, and turn him loose.
Turn around,
and then let him have it out.
Yeah.
Make sure you have the a halter on him tied so that when he does buck, every time he bucks, that halter bites him. Every time he hits, that halter's going to bite him. All right. So now that's one. Now they buck at a canter. That's stupidity. I get really frustrated with these quote trainers. All right. Number one. Does this trainer, is he teaching you a lead departure? Ask the trainer if he even knows what a lead departure is, okay? And most of these, quote, handmade trainers don't mean. I'm not going to dig on him anymore. I'm done, okay? So what's a lead departure? If I'm going to have my mule canter, here's what people do. They trot him really fast until finally he goes into a natural canter. Here's the problem. His back is hollowed out, because you got his head elevated, because you got your hands too tight. And what's he trying to do to tell you that his back's hollowed out is he's doing a kick out. He's trying to tell you, hey, you do not have me in a proper lead departure. And what that is this. I roll my hands and I roll the head down. I prepare them as we're going around in a circle. I take my left hand and I roll my hand up. That picks up on this shoulder so that it reaches out. That puts pressure on the right shoulder, so I've got a pivot point. And then I use my left leg, and I move it back to move the hip over. Now the mule is physically and then mentally ready to go into a canter. Now, you can do the lead departure from a dead standstill, or you can do it from a trot, and you can go into a canter that way. But look, if that mule's kicking out, it's you that's wrong. It is not the saddle. It is not the breeching. It's you, because you do not have the proper perspective on how to get the mule ready to go into a canter. Put that rear cinch on there. Do yourself a favor, because if that rear cinch ain't on there, your mule is going to pay the price, huh, Eric?
I like I said, I'd say tell that mule to get over it. Put the dang cinch on there. Put him in a round pin. Let him figure it out.
No, you have people say, don't put that back cinch on, that's a bucking cinch. Well, why is there a D-ring on every Western saddle? Why is there two of them? They don't put D-rings, that back D-ring, so that you're going to buck. That's crazy. The idea of the back D-ring is to keep the saddle from cantilevering. That's what happens. And when it cantilevers, it's putting all that pressure up on the shoulder. If this trainer, if you're a trainer, folks, you should understand that. It should become natural to you to see that a rear cinch is extremely important to keep that saddle from cantilevering. That D-ring's back there for a reason.
One thing you said when you started this show off was that mules are not horses.
Yeah.
And if you ever watch a mule roll and you see his belly, it's not a big 55-gallon drum barrel. It's shaped like a teardrop.
Yeah.
And so he's shaped different. His belly is different. And not only his back, but his belly too. So, if you've got a nice cinch around the meaty part of his, just like you and me, if I put a belt on my pants to keep my belt up, I can cinch that thing out a couple more holes and I'm still comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
But if I put a belt up here,
Yeah.
And I sit you around there, it's going to affect your breathing, right?
Yeah.
It's going to run up under your armpits. It's going to be uncomfortable. And if you, especially on a donkey, if you reach your hand up under a donkey's chest, I mean, even on a 15-hand donkey, it's about that wide.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. You know, so if I got a cinch up there and it's going to be, and what happens when the saddle gets loose and I got a single cinch? What do? Tighten that cinch up, right?
Yeah.
And so now he's even more uncomfortable.
Yeah.
You don't want that saddle to move. It's moving all over the place. So if you get that rear cinch tight, that saddle's not going to move as much. He's going to be more comfortable. He's just got to get that in his head that, you know, he's got to get over. That's what I say. He's got to get over that.
Yeah.
He's got to get over that. I mean, something's happened. I don't know. Maybe what's happened to the donkey or to the mule.
Well, they're most likely using a horse saddle, and they
So
got
they
that
love.
twist,
Yeah.
that 6th and 7th rib. It's putting pressure on that 6th and 7th rib,
Mm-hmm.
and he's just flat compounding it. So look, folks, you know, take him, put him in the round pen, turn him loose with that rear cinch on there, and let him have it out. Let him see that he's going to get over it. You cannot baby him when it comes to this part. This is the health of your mule. This is not a matter of if it's going to be more comfortable for the mule. No, when that saddle gets on top of that scapula, which I need to bring my scapula back and show it again, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and when that saddle gets on that scapula, your mule's done. Now, over here at the Flying Diamond, I'm going to leave us at this right here. At the Flying Diamond, they went through all kinds of medical stuff trying to figure out why this mule was trippy, you know, and they x-rayed him and all this stuff. And I said, did they x-ray the top of the scapula? And the guy says, no, I know they did, you know. And I said, you have your veterinarian x-ray the top of that scapula and look at that fiber running across the top and look at it in the very back toward the lobe. Look at that first inch. Tell me if it's cracking or not, okay? And you can even see where it was. So they're doing that. They're excited because I showed them. I said, look, you know, I brought the leg forward. I brought it back. I said, there's nothing wrong with that shoulder. It's stable. If it wasn't stable, they'd show me right off the bat. So it's going to be fun to see what's going to happen when they do the x-rays there, Dave.
Guys, that's it for today's program. Thank you so much for joining us, Eric. What a privilege. I had no idea. I turned on Skype. There you are. I said, all right, this is going to be a special show.
Yeah.
Be here, yeah.
So, folks, make sure you go to mountainridgegear.com. You can check out everything Eric has there to offer. Steve loves all of Eric's products. Really good quality stuff. Eric does a lot of work with donkeys. Steve,
learn more about
go ahead.
I've got a YouTube channel, Mountain Ridge Gear, and it's all donkey videos on there, and you can see some of my screw-ups and some of the things I do there. And there's one particular, how to keep your saddle donkey comfortable. It's a lot of stuff Steve and I talked about today, where they put the cinches and the britchet and all that stuff.
Folks, thanks for hanging out with us. Thanks for spending a little bit of extra time. Make sure you go to Eric Lynn's website, mountainridgegear.com. Click the link in the comment section to go check out his YouTube page. Subscribe and like there. Folks, we'll see you next week. Everyone take care. Bye-bye now.